Hi guys. Today I decided to do a little kind of tribute to Women's History Month. March is Women's History Month, and so I decided to do a little reading about what that's about, and also maybe show a few women who have been highlighted by the different organizations this year for Women's History Month. I'm going to be chewing bubblegum gum and just reading through kind of what the history means, and also highlighting a few women. I hope everybody's doing well. Okay. Sorry, that gum, it kind of takes a second to chew it up enough to talk. Okay, so I got this off of the National Women's History Alliance website. It says, as recently as the 1970s, women's history was virtually an unknown topic in the K-12 curriculum or in general public consciousness. To address this situation, the Educational Task Force of the Sonoma County, California Commission on the Status of Women initiated a Women's History Week celebration for 1978. The week March 8th, International Women's Day, was chosen as the focal point of the observance. The local Women's History Week activities met with enthusiastic response, and dozens of schools planned special programs for Women's History Week. Over 100 community women participated by doing special presentations in classrooms throughout the country, and an annual Real Woman essay contest drew hundreds of entries. The finale for the week was a celebratory parade and program held in the center of downtown Santa Rosa, California. I did not realize this. I didn't realize it even went back that far, because it was not acknowledged when I was growing up, especially in school. So, all right, it says, in 1979, Molly Murphy McGregor, a member of our group, was invited to participate in the Women's History Institute at Sarah Lawrence College, which was chaired by noted historian Gerda Lerner and attended by the national leaders of organizations for women and girls. When the participants learned about the success of Sonoma County's Women's History Week celebration, they decided to initiate similar celebrations within their own organizations, communities, and school districts. They also agreed to support an effort to secure a National Women's History Week. The first steps toward success came in February 1980, when President Carter issued the first presidential proclamation declaring the week of March 8, 1980, as National Women's History Week. In the same year, Representative Barbara Mikulski, who at the time was in the House of Representatives, and Senator Orrin Hatch co-sponsored a congressional resolution for National Women's History Week 1981. This co-sponsorship demonstrated the wide-ranging political support for recognizing, honoring, and celebrating the achievements of American women. As word spread rapidly across the nation, state departments of education encouraged celebrations of National Women's History Week as an effective means to achieving equity goals within classrooms. Maryland, Pennsylvania, New York, Oregon, Alaska, and other states developed and distributed curriculum materials for all of their public schools. Organizations sponsored essay contests and other special programs in their local areas. Within a few years, thousands of schools and communities were celebrating National Women's History Week, supported and encouraged by resolutions from governors, city councils, school boards, and the U.S. Congress. Each year, the dates of National Women's History Week, the week of March 8th, changed, and every year a new lobbying effort was needed. Yearly, a national effort that included thousands of individuals and hundreds of educational and women's organizations was spearheaded by the National Women's History Alliance. By 1986, 14 states had already declared March as Women's History Month. Wow. This momentum and state-by-state action was used as the rationale to lobby Congress to declare the entire month of March 1987 as National Women's History Month. In 1987, Congress declared March as National Women's History Month in perpetuity. A special presidential proclamation is issued every year which honors the extraordinary achievements of American women. President Jimmy Carter's message to the nation designating March 2nd through 8th, 1980 as National Women's History Week is shared below. So this is what he said in 1980. From the first settlers who came to our shores, from the first American Indian families who befriended them, men and women have worked together to build this nation. Too often the women were unsung and sometimes their contributions went unnoticed. But the achievements, leadership, courage, strength, and love of the women who built America was as vital as that of the men whose names we know so well. As Dr. Gerda Lermer has noted, women's history is women's right. It is an essential and indispensable heritage from which we can draw pride, comfort, courage, and long-range vision. I ask my fellow Americans to recognize this heritage with appropriate activities during National Women's History Week, March 2nd through 8, 1980. I urge libraries, schools, and community organizations to focus their observances on the leaders who struggled for equality. Susan B. Anthony, Sojourner Truth, Lucy Stone, Lucretia Mott, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Harriet Tubman, and Alice Paul. Understanding the true history of our country will help us to comprehend the need for full equality under the law for all our people. This goal can be achieved by ratifying the 27th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which states that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. And the women, specifically that the National Women's History Alliance highlighted this year. Well, first their theme, the 2023 National Women's History theme, is celebrating women who tell our stories. The women that are on their website pictured are Toni Morrison, Maxine Hong Kingston, Jovita Idar, Maya Angelou, Gerda Lerner, Gloria Steinem, Winona LaDuke, Lillian Hellman, Betty Soskin, Willa Cather, Gertrude Stein, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. And about their theme, they said the National Women's History Alliance, which spearheaded the movement for March being declared National Women's History Month, has announced the Women's History theme for 2023, celebrating women who tell our stories. Throughout 2023, the NWHA will encourage recognition of women, past and present, who have been active in all forms of media and storytelling, including print, radio, TV, stage, screen, blogs, podcasts, and more. The timely theme honors women in every community who have devoted their lives and talents to producing art, pursuing truth, and reflecting the human condition decade after decade. From the earliest storytellers through pioneering journalists, our experiences have been captured by a wide variety of artists and teachers. These include authors, songwriters, scholars, playwrights, performers, and grandmothers throughout time. Women have long been instrumental in passing on our heritage in word and in print to communicate the lessons of those who came before us. Women's stories and the larger human story expand our understanding and strengthen our connections with each other. As in previous years, the Alliance, which is centered in Santa Rosa, California, will encourage local communities throughout the country to use the year's theme to guide their own celebrations. The NWHA will popularize national efforts through online celebrations, a special magazine, and thematic products that recognize and honor these brave, accomplished, and influential women who told and continue to tell our stories. Today, and over the years ahead, their dedication and shared desire to give voices to the voiceless are critical in keeping us informed, entertained, and aware. I like that. And then I had printed off all of these things to read, but then saw that my printer was running out of ink. So I decided to pull up my computer to share a few of the on womenshistory.org. They have 3 featured biographies, and I just thought I would share a little bit from each one. So the first one is Bernice Johnson Reagan. She was born in 1942, and she's still alive. Oh, it says, Bernice Johnson Reagan is a renowned composer, historian, musician, and activist. She's also credited with founding Sweet Honey in the Rock, an all-female and all-black a cappella group. Much of her work centers Black identity and social justice, and many of her musical projects highlight the civil rights era. Bernice Johnson Reagan was born Bernice Johnson on October 4th, 1942, just outside of Albany, Georgia. Her parents, Beatrice and Reverend Jesse Johnson, raised Reagan and her siblings within the town's closely connected African American community. Reagan describes this experience as being raised by a whole community of people, rather than solely by her parents. She recalls living in close proximity to her relatives' homes. Reagan's schooling started young, and she was in 4th grade by the time she was 7 years old. Wow. Following primary school, she and her siblings attended an all-black high school. Despite the ever-present racism that prevailed in the South, Reagan was able to establish a strong sense of self in the face of the most challenging odds. Her father's role as a reverend in an all-black church and her childhood in a primarily black community ensured Reagan was brought up in an environment full of black music and traditions. Her environment allowed her to constantly learn more about her culture. Heavy engagement with her community was a large factor in the passion she developed for black identity and heritage. So she attended Albany State College, which is now Albany State University. She joined the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, as well as the National Association for Colored People. She was jailed in 1961 for participating in a civil rights demonstration. When she discussed her experience in jail with interviewer Chris Lee, she immediately reflected upon the power of song. Reagan recounted that there were many kinds of black people in jail with her, all evidently from different walks of life. One thing they had in common was their imprisonment, and when encouraged to sing by fellow jailed civil rights leaders, Reagan reflected that growing up in Albany, I learned that if you bring black people together, you bring them together with a song. When singing in jail, she recognized the power of music to create and maintain community, even in the most dire situations. Though this was an enlightening experience for Reagan that would come to guide her for the rest of her career, her imprisonment resulted in her expulsion from Albany State College. She was later accepted into Spelman College, but then she dropped out to pursue civil rights opportunities. She founded the SNCC Freedom Singers along with Rutha Harris, Charles Neblett, and future husband Cordell Reagan. The group began touring in December 1962 to raise money for SNCC. They were officially the first group of freedom singers to tour nationally. In 1963, Bernice Johnson and Cordell Reagan married. A year later, Reagan left the Freedom Singers to give birth to their first child, Tashi Reagan. The couple had one more child together in 1965, Quan Tana Reagan. Bernice Johnson Reagan and Cordell Reagan then split in 1967. Following her divorce, she decided to complete her undergraduate degree at Spelman. She graduated with her bachelor's in non-Western history. She then received the Ford Foundation Fellowship, which was created in 1962 to increase faculty diversity at U.S. colleges and universities, and is given to students who demonstrate academic excellence, a commitment to pluralism, and a strong interest in teaching and research. This enabled her to move to Washington, D.C. to begin a graduate program at Howard University. She graduated in 1975 with her PhD in history. She was the vocal director of the Black Repertory Theater in D.C. while she was at Howard. And while she was the vocal director, she created the all-female and all-black a cappella group called Sweet Honey in the Rock in 1973. This was the second ensemble created by Reagan. In 1966, she founded Harambee Singers while studying at Spelman. The Harambee Singers were associated with the Black Consciousness movement, which was born out of opposition to South African apartheid. And it remained active through the mid-1960s and late 1970s. So she served as director of Sweet Honey in the Rock from 1973 until 2003. Wow, 30 years. The group became world famous during her nearly 30 years with the group. Following a performance at a 1975 University of Chicago festival, Flying Fish Records signed the group. Sweet Honey's songs covered a wide range of genres, from spirituals to children's songs. They recorded a number of albums and were propelled into stardom. Sweet Honey's fame allowed them to tour both nationally and internationally, including in Canada, Africa, and Asia. The ensemble performed more than 60 times a year, with most shows sold out well in advance. Wow. Their debut album was self-titled Sweet Honey in the Rock. Other works include In This Land, Sacred Ground, and The Women Gather. Sweet Honey in the Rock was nominated for Grammy Awards 3 times. Aside from their high-quality musical compositions, Sweet Honey in the Rock is also applauded for their commitment to justice, respect, and equality. Their mission reads, "The ensemble educates, entertains, and empowers its audience and community through the dynamic vehicles of a cappella singing and American Sign Language interpretation for the deaf and hard of hearing." In 1993, Reagan wrote the book We Who Believe in Freedom, Sweet Honey in the Rock, Still on the Journey, which details the history of the group. Though Reagan no longer directs or performs with the ensemble following her retirement, she is still celebrated by Sweet Honey in the Rock's remaining members. She also joined the Smithsonian in 1974. In 1988, she became a curator at the National Museum of American History, and she founded the program in Black American culture there. Wow. She developed major projects at the Smithsonian, received continuous recognition for her many musical, academic, and cultural contributions. In 1989, she received a MacArthur Foundation grant. In 1993, American University appointed her as a distinguished professor of history. The next year, she was named Curator Emeritus by the Smithsonian. She was also awarded the Charles E. Frankel Prize and Presidential Medal by President Clinton in 1995 for her contributions to the humanities. In 2003, Reagan was named Professor Emeritus at American University. In the same year, she was awarded the Heinz Award for Arts and Humanities. Wow. She's done documentaries. So she really goes well with the theme they came up with this year of women who share story through song. And then that was pretty long, so I'm not going to read the full biography of these other women, but Ophelia Settle Egypt was a medical social worker and women's rights advocate. She's remembered for many things, including her work to make women's and reproductive health care accessible to Black communities in Southeast Washington, D.C. And then Loretta Ross is an academic and activist who has dedicated many years to advocating for women's rights and reproductive justice. Those are the 3 women that are featured on womenshistory.org for their biographies, but then they have pages and pages and pages of other women biographies on here. Lots of women that I obviously recognize for what they've done, but also women that I don't know about. So this is a really cool place to go see. I've loved seeing the different things out in public, like billboards and different events that are happening in honor of National Women's History Month. But like I said, I feel like it hasn't been super well advertised and promoted where I live until recently. And I don't even know that it's in the curriculum in schools. Maybe briefly, maybe just like a little snippet in a textbook or something. But hopefully it'll just continue to grow. More awareness will be raised. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Several people have wanted me to read something again, and so I thought this would be a great way to do that, but also highlight National Women's History Month. I hope you all are doing well, and I will see you again very soon.